in Philippines, close to midnight, to India, to Georgia, to Ghana and South Africa. And those of us who are here in the United States, I am speaking from my home in Michigan, United States. I will ask Stephanie that you give me sharing opportunities. I will share some slides with you. But to begin with, thank you for coming. This is a time where we are coming out of the year 2020, which was a year none of us expected to be how it turned out. For those of you who are in the current cohort, I really feel for you. It was wonderful to walk into New York in the middle of winter for those of us who came in 1996. And the time we spent at Columbia University within the program was life-changing with me, and the testament for it is what we will focus on today. And when we speak of human rights currently, I also want to kind of just do an overview and look at where we are and how we've got here, reminding you that I would have loved to put on a suit today and my tie, but this month in the United States is Black History Month. And so every presentation I'm making, every opportunity I get to wear an African-related outfit to honor those amazing Black people who came to this country against their will and served and built such a strong system on which many of us are also standing today. And to make this statement in the history of the United States now, where we have an amazing vice president of color, both African American and also Indian American, and representing women. For those of us who are parents, it's such a proud moment that we have girls who can look in the White House and say, one day it is possible I can get there. And when I say that, I also go back to Martin Luther King telling his daughters, and I go back to the women who have passed away, who worked so hard for voting rights of women. And now here we are with a woman vice president in the political system of the United States and therefore the world. But that does not also take away the situation we got in before these elections were concluded. Unfortunate situation at the Capitol. I know many of you, all of you are in tuned in human rights and know this, but for the recording purposes on the record, I want to recognize that that's also something that gave such a bad name to this wonderful country of ours we cherish, reflection into the world. And for me as a Ugandan, born and raised in Uganda, it came at a week before presidential elections were to happen in Uganda. Every presidential election, ladies and gentlemen, we always get USA observers to come and watch those elections. At the time when these people had besieged the Capitol, American politics and American embassy in Uganda was not even going to try to observe these elections given what had just happened. The president of Uganda, who has been in power for more than 30 years, and recently got back in power through rigged election, which everybody believes it was rigged, also used an example of a former president of this country now to justify his staying in power and saying, you can't tell us what to do, look what is happening in your own country. I also want to use the backdrop of what happened last year as a human rights advocate who practices it every single day and a Black man living in the United States, that racial injustice in this country as of last year and what has happened is something we cannot forget or overlook. That gives you an overview of what is happening in the world. And I know all around, Myanmar right now is on fire, protests are going on. We can go one example at a time, but I always ask myself, what can I do as a single person, as a human being, in these spectacular problems that we cannot all put hands around? So while we were at Columbia University in 1996, the first home we ever visited, for all of you now that Professor Falante is here, the first time Aurora and all 1919 advocates visited was in in the boondocks. I use the word boondocks, out of New York. Joanne and her husband invited us to their home in the middle of snow. We took a van out of New York, and many of us touched snow for the first time and got to live in a country living. It was also an amazing opportunity to get to see an American house and how Americans lived. At the time, we didn't know, and we had been to different apartments in New York, but had never been in a country home. So Joanne, you are not only a professor, you also became our parent while we were at Columbia University, and we thank you.
It was our pleasure and our honor.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which always gives me creeps on how to do it. But I will attempt here and share my screen and tell you my journey from Columbia University and what we are doing in Nyaka, taking an overview I used of political, social, human rights to the economic, social, and cultural rights, which is what mostly I have addressed, while also keeping an ear on the political situation around the world. Multiple. So Stefan, how do I share my screen here?
Jackson, I made you the host. We can see it right now.
All right, very good. Okay.
Everyone.
So ladies and gentlemen, my name is SW Jackson Kaguri. I was born and raised in Uganda in a very tiny village called Nyaka. I went to school there. My parents, my mom passed away on December 21, 2020. My dad still lives in this village. Mom and dad never went to school, so they can't read and write anything in English. But mom and dad worked so hard to make sure that their 5 children would attend school. The question I still ask my dad and I asked my mom was how, why would you even dare to do something many people were not able to do? And there are 2 reasons they always gave us. Was number 1, they wanted their children to have a better life than theirs. Many of you know that parents will do whatever they can to give you that opportunity. But number 2, mom and dad wanted to have a retirement package. That's how I name it now, but they wanted their lives to be bettered by their children. So they made an investment in us children so we can come back and care for them. And I will tell you right now, my mom died a happy woman. She lived in a good house. She had all the medical care she needed because they invested in us. And that didn't make it easy for them to raise 5 children with no income except growing crops, chickens, goats, and grow tomatoes and what you can eat. But I remember vividly in 1974 when I started schooling, when my dad would struggle to get 5 pencils for his 5 children, and he would buy 1 pencil like this and take that pencil and divide it 5 times so each of us can have something to write when we go to school. He would line us up in front of the house and break that pencil. 1 for Jackson, 1 for Christine, 1 for Faida, 1 for Mbabazi, 1 for Frank. And each of us would grab that, a 1/5 of the pencil, tie it with a string, hold it on our chest, and run 7 miles to go to school. 7 miles to go there and 7 miles to come back. While growing up in this village, I was also a curious, stubborn young man who would identify quickly what injustice was, though I didn't know the vocabulary of the word justice and injustice. I witnessed my dad at the same time after breaking those pencils in the evening after he drank. He would start abusing, throwing my mom out of the house. She would sleep outside the house in neighbors' places and come back in the morning, still makes food for him, makes food for us so we can get to school. So abuse was all around us. I also would witness children who would come to school the next morning, but their parents could not afford that pencil, so they would be sent home, and many of those never came back to school, and therefore later lived a life or died early because they didn't get an opportunity. So the injustice word I didn't know carried me through school. I watched girls who would every month disappear and not come back to school for some reason or the other that I didn't know. Now I know when their periods began, because they didn't have sanitary products, they could not come back. I witnessed kids who would come to school and cough blood and pass away 2 days later just because they didn't have medical care. All of this I didn't know. Went through school quickly, I will summarize it, got to university, later met Paul Martin as he was giving a presentation in Uganda with Chive Sok, started talking about human rights. Now I have finished high school, I understand what human rights is. I've read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm studying social sciences and social administration in Uganda, and I've finished this. Paul started talking with me about human rights and then introduced me to the program. Chivisok went back to Colombia, sent me an application. I applied and came to Columbia University. While at Columbia University in a class with Aurora, Chitra, Juan, Amy, we got to learn everything about human rights and human rights advocacy. I had left Uganda after launching a small organization called Human Rights Concern, looking at drivers' rights, constitutionalism, how we can translate the laws in Uganda and educate people to understand that human rights is not separate from economic, social, and civil, it's whole combination. But as many politicians would love to see it, they want to talk only about civil and political rights. So I got in a classroom, many classes at Columbia University, like many of you have done. And my concentration continued looking at that kid in my village who didn't have a pencil, that woman who was beaten at night and still have to cook, that girl who can't go to school because they don't have pencils. And I went back after my brother had passed away of HIV and AIDS. My sister also passed away because of HIV and AIDS. And I decided I was going to do something about this situation. So I started a program called Nyaka, which is from the name of the village where I was born and raised. Nyaka Jezi is the full name, Nyaka is half of the name. From right beginning of this organization, I wanted it to be owned by the people in the village. Otherwise, I would have called it the TJ Kaguri Foundation. After all, I had already been introduced in the United States to all different foundations to have people name their funds, but I wanted our people, the children, the women who will get involved, to co-own this adventure, the vision, and turn their lives into better lives moving forward. The school was started mainly to focus on orphans, because I had been given that a fifth of a pencil and I had received an amazing opportunity. I wanted mainly to connect small Jacksons and create as many people who will also get education and go back to their communities and turn it upside down for better sustainable development. So what you see in front of you is a picture of young children in our Nyaka school program. The entrance of that school, I will give you when we get later into some pictures, we'll see more, but the story of how it started and where we are is what I just shared with you. The origin, in 2001, August 2nd, to be precise, 2001, was already living here in this country. I was working in Indiana, had saved $5,000 that I wanted to buy a house with, start the American dream. And when we visited my village and saw so many children who didn't have opportunity to go to school, we decided let's put this $5,000 and build one classroom, just one classroom, so children would get that opportunity to go in. But as soon as that classroom foundation was dug, we realized, and my human rights connections and human rights heart started pumping that blood and say, we can't just give these children education. Number one, the pencils were there because that's closed my heart. And these kids now are getting a full pencil with eraser for their school. But immediately they started school, realized these children are coming to school hungry. They cannot concentrate in the classroom. They have walked 7.5 miles. I had my parents who would pack me a portion of food when I was a baby. These are orphans, they don't have a portion of food or even anybody to grow food. You know, HIV/AIDS takes at least 3 to 5 years for somebody to contract and pass away. Within that time frame, no parent would say because they have HIV/AIDS, they are going to die. Everybody stays in, let me do what I can. Maybe my child will be better. So that meant women whose husbands were sick with HIV/AIDS never went to their gardens. Men whose children were sick lost hope and couldn't work anymore. And therefore, there was no food at home. The children who were left with grandmothers now we are putting in school have nothing to eat. So we started to use a holistic approach. Holistic in a sense, coming from the human rights background, holistic human rights approach. We decided we are going to give these kids education. Then we contacted the local management on the ground and asked them, what can we do to make sure these children have something to eat? They said, our land is fertile, let's have gardens. So we started gardens and grew food within our gardens so we can feed our children. 1 meal a day to start it. Now in 2021, with the COVID, which I will address later, our children have 2 meals a day. They come to school, they drink some porridge. Porridge is corn flour mixed with milk as to add in nutrients, and that's their breakfast. At lunchtime, they harvest their own stuff. Now we make posho, beans, and make them a good lunch. They eat lunch at school, then concentrate going on into classrooms. We make sure they have basic health care. We started with a nurse, one nurse in school, and now we have our own clinics surrounding the schools we build there. We make sure they have where to stay. This is not an orphanage. The kids come in and go to their homes. Those who don't have homes, we place them within homes where a woman lives, and this woman is called a grandmother. Many of them are not biological grandmothers, but they are in our culture. Calling here grandmother is a prestige that gives you that honor of now I can raise children, even though I might not have children biologically. Then we make sure when they graduate school, they have employment. Unemployment in Uganda is 65%. People who graduate from college, majority of them don't get jobs. Those children who graduate from schools, we make sure in one way or the other, they find something to do. So let's share. As we share, I want you to see the smiles of these children and think they don't have a mother, they don't have a father, because majority of our students don't have mom or dad. But pay attention to how they look, pay attention to their smiles, pay attention to their confidence. Part of our unhappiness and our lack of joy is not rooted in what we have or we don't have. Part of this community has made these children also believe in themselves and be hopeful in such a way that they can walk confidently, sing songs, smile, while we have kids here who have everything, I mean here in the United States, and still go through so much of bullying with each other, depression, stressful moments. But here are children given just an opportunity to go to school, they walk confidently, they help each other instead of bullying each other. And when I say that, I want to give you an example here. We have children who are disabled. One of the human rights advocates, Michael in Uganda, and I stay in touch talking about these issues. We don't have a wheelchair for this kid, but every morning when they are going to school, his friends go to his home and carry him on their shoulders and bring him to school. When he wants to go to the bathroom, they take turns, take him to the bathroom, and then in the evening, they carry him back home. The good news, he has food at school. The good news, his sores can be bandaged at our clinic. The good news, he has love and brothers and sisters in school he can count on. When we speak of human rights and being together as one, this example exemplifies how every person can love each other regardless of the differences, whether they are physical, mental, or color, or gender. But to give you a good example on where it started and where it is, in 2001, here is the picture of the $5,000 amazing structure on the left-hand side. That was a proud moment launching a brick school, 2 classrooms. And in 2021, I want you to see on the right-hand side, the high school we completed with laboratories, with a kitchen and dining services, with classrooms, even on the 2nd floor. And when I say 2nd floor here, many of you live in towns and have seen skyscrapers. In our village, this was the first time anybody had seen a building on top of the other building. So in addition of changing lives, we are also now like an attraction of what is possible when people come back and work together. We have gathered community members and inspired them to dream big, but also to realize that they have rights too. These 5 basic human rights needs. And in a sense, the community is the one that takes care of this school. I'll tell you, since I started this day, I continue to live in the United States. I worked at Michigan State University, I worked at Indiana University, and then in 2020, I decided to focus full-time on leading this organization and leading it into the future sustainable moments. When we talk of education, like I said, pencils are very special to me. We make sure that every child has their pencil, have their uniform, have their books, and they have shoes. Many kids in this village cannot afford shoes. Shoes are not a necessity, but for our children's confidence, we make sure that we give them even those things that are not a necessity, but will help them advance. And this helps us with children who struggle in the classroom. Remember, we recruit children based on their need of being an orphan or the poorest of the poor. That means that some children come in and they are not academically inclined, they are still struggling. Through primary school, which is elementary school in the United States, all our children get the same uniform, same food, same everything. When we graduate them, each of them wears a gown and we have a graduation speaker, they all sing together. At primary level, of course, some don't pass the exams, but we want them those 7 years to have the confidence of family, whether they become a driver, whether they become a lawyer, whether they become a nurse, whether they become a professor. We want you to always have that foundation of family, of Nyaka, and that we have done. And all those professions I've mentioned, we have children who have graduated and passed on to go. Our schools are set up in a typical Uganda system. The secondary school has vocational part. So kids who are inclined to do tailoring, construction, IT, study a vocation that is not tailored to go to university, we do provide that opportunity. But we also provide something the government argued with me about, which is when a child gets pregnant, we still keep them in school. That is against Uganda government laws and many laws around in schools. But Nyaka decided our children go through so much. Many are raped in the community, and the people who rape them never get to face the law. So we decided as an organization, we will give these girls an opportunity. We will keep them in school. We run community libraries, we have clean water systems, we have grandmothers programs throughout the communities. So when a child gets pregnant, we provide daycare for them at school, employ an older person who will take care of the child when the girl is in school. She goes back, breastfeeds, comes to school. This helps other children to see how hard it is to take care of a child and go to school. But we also give that girl a choice. Do you want to continue with the academic track, or do you want the sun is bothering me here. Or do you want to learn a skill that will take you 2 years? We give them that choice while also guiding them that they cannot give up just because they are pregnant. Whether it was consensual pregnancy or it was a rape, then our social workers step in and start doing the social work and counseling work. Within our nutrition program, here we pose with bread, but I also chose a picture that has bread because we are beginning a vocation of starting a bakery at the secondary school I just showed you. We don't only want to buy and feed children, we want them to learn how food is made. We also want them to learn how to make money. We want to start businesses within Nyaka so they can economically grow their community, but nutrition is such a huge issue for many children who are living in these countries. Given the type of audience I'm speaking at now, I do not really have to bring statistics, how many kids are, how much malnutrition we are dealing with, how many kids are suffering and dying before 5. You all know this information. When I'm speaking to the audience that is not as informed as yours, I pull those statistics and share them. Because education without food, education without sanitary products for girls, education without a social worker, education without bandages and aspirins for kids who begin to have a headache would fail so many, as you have seen. And I've addressed these issues at United Nations several times using holistic approach to change and sustain communities rather than throw one aspect of work and think that problems will solve themselves. For the whole community, we have made sure that we not only focus at schools and children who come to our schools, the entire community, we launched a program in collaboration with Rotary International and built a farm where we employ as many people as we can and grow food beyond what we consume and sell it, but we also built a clean water system. Clean water, once again, you know those stats, billion people out there don't have clean water. Here in the United States, every toilet you flush, you are flushing 7 liters of clean drinkable water. And when I say this to high school students, they go, so we should not use the toilet? I say, no. Please flush, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble with your parents. But be aware of what's going on. So maybe when you are going to Starbucks next day, you might say, today I will spare Starbucks and send $10 to India so they can have clean water system, or to Nicaragua, or anywhere around the world. But we've also looked at the population many people have ignored. That's the grandmothers. This to me was no brainer because I was raised around a grandmother who loved me and cared for me so much, though she had so many grandchildren. It was also an obvious. Children are in a community. Grandmothers have lost their own children and their own grandchildren, but the love stays there for every child. When you truly hear the saying that it takes a village to raise a child, this community of ours really lives that saying. But I also twisted it and say it takes a child to make a village, given the vision one person can have and change the entire village and trajectory. So when we started in Nyaka, grandmothers who accepted to live with children, we invited them and put them in the system of Nyaka. And then we realized immediately these women were gathering. They had an opportunity for the first time to gather by themselves, women only, discuss their issues alone, select a chairperson, a secretary, a treasurer, and a committee only with women. This, even for my mother, because she was a member, honorary member, was such a liberating movement of women for women alone. Men opposed it, of course. How can you take my wife? Some of them are still married. And then they go and start making trouble. Then they started seeing the economics of these women and what they were doing. Because these women were not only raising children, we gathered them and started giving each woman $20 to go and be innovative. At the time was, we want you to use it to make more money. So one woman will say, if I grow tomatoes, I will make more money. Another one will say, if I buy 3 pigs and sell them, I'll make more money. Another one will say, maybe if I make baskets, I'll make more money. We found out that the basket making was making more money for these women at a faster pace. So we started a microfinance program. Grandmother's Fund, we call it. Ladies and gentlemen, when you think of economic power and look at the power of multiplication, these women we call our grandmothers. As we speak now, we are providing 15,000 women opportunities to economically sustain themselves. The men who were opposed to their women going together now are working as assistants of their wives. Because all of a sudden there was a mattress in the house, all of a sudden there's sugar in the house, all of a sudden there's soap in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, these are basic needs to us, to me here in the United States. These are deal breakers in the village. A woman takes 3 weeks without affording soap to wash her clothes, to take a bath. Her children cannot take a bath. They cannot wash their plates they are using to drink water, clean water we have there, because they have no soap. And we cannot go to 15,000 homesteads providing a soap. So now some of these women have actually developed and more skills and started buying motorcycles called bodabodas for their sons and their husbands. So the husbands now go and do boda all day. And when the woman is coming from the meeting, they have cell phones, calls the husbands, hi honey, yes, we are done. And the man goes with the boda, picks her up with her baskets, takes her home. For the longest, these baskets we have brought them to United States via suitcases. When people are visiting Nyaka, we ask them to bring them back and we sell them when I go to speak at different churches. But here is the more transformational work we introduced. Tabitha and I were in Uganda when we found out that one of the children in our school that wears green uniform had been raped a day before by a 35-year-old man. We had not thought about beginning a gender-based violence, SBGV, or EJA is actually my mom and Tabitha's mom combined. This is the program that looks at sexual violence, sexual assault, sexual violence, and gender-based violence. Remember the story I started with, my mom being chased out of the house? During COVID, the numbers of domestic violence and rape and sexual assault went exponentially high. Because as soon as countries were locked down, perpetrators found a way to do this. This is a human rights violation that goes on in war-torn countries, but also in peaceful countries, including the United States of America right here. In the villages, when a child was raped, the perpetrator would just give a goat or give $3, which is 30,000 Uganda shillings in Uganda, and settle the case. So we said enough is enough and started a program. Here is Brenda, our social worker who heads that program in Uganda. We have put more than 72 people now in jail who have committed these sexual acts, went to court, prosecute them, and make sure they stay in jail where they belong. But we have also taken all the children who are sexually assaulted. Now we are beyond orphans to kids who are vulnerable, and took in those children, pay their health police report, pay their medical exams, make sure they get counseling, and some of them, the people who are raping them, have HIV/AIDS. So we have to make sure that they have medication for HIV/AIDS. Pill after, also there's a medicine that a child who was raped within 48 hours can take a pill And if they had HIV/AIDS, they would not. If the man had HIV/AIDS, they would not contract HIV/AIDS. So we provide that. This program completely finished the whole cycle. We were trying to build a holistic cycle. So now we are addressing physical, mental, education, economic, all that together in one amazing organization, which was born and the idea conceived at Columbia University. So I'm forever grateful for the program. I'm forever grateful for our discussions. Aurora is still here. We would go in Steve Mark's economic, social, human rights and discuss these issues, while we can also have colleagues who are addressing the political, civil. Nyaka and myself and our community have completely focused on this economic, social, and cultural rights, and we are making a huge impact in this village. Well, thank you. There's so much I can say, but I know we have an active group here who will want to ask questions, and as you ask your questions, I will share more of what we are doing, how we are doing it, and how we plan to continue sustaining it moving forward into the future. This year we will be celebrating 20 years of Nyaka, and that tells you that since 1996, we are also celebrating our 25 years anniversary with our amazing human beings around the world. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. I see the number grew to 18. Please ask questions or put them in a chat. Stephanie can help me. I'll read them and address them. And I will also share in the chat my email and WhatsApp number. I communicate. Joanne is a testament here. I will respond to any questions you might not get to ask now. I will answer them, and I love to stay in touch with all of you. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for coming today.
Of course. Jackson, you know, every time I hear you, and it's been many times, it's always like the first time. Just your enthusiasm, what you're doing, it just fills me with such admiration for what you do and how you didn't forget where you came from. And today I learned even more about Nyaka, keeping the pregnant girls in school, the prestige that you have given to women who do not have their own children, the prestige to make them a grandmother, starting a bakery, amazing. And also I just want to say thank you that you still keep in touch with Michael Moreau of Masaka, who was in the 2017 HRAP. And I know from Kemal Pervanic, who was in the 2012 HRAP, Bosnia, 2 concentration camps. He runs art camps to bring together children of different ethnicities in his village, which was overrun during the Bosnian War, that you stay in touch with Kemal too. So Jackson, thank you so much for always coming to speak with us. And I mean, people always say thank you for what you do. I don't always say it because how can we thank you? What you do is so amazing, except, you know, thank you. I don't know what else to say. But I would like to turn it to Carol Dianti, because I will let Carol tell us a little bit about what she does, and I know she has a question for you.
Very good. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, I don't know what time is it in Uganda, Jackson, but thank you once again. Thank you for TV. Thank you once again for the amazing work that you do. I actually have been looking at this, and sometimes you actually don't have an idea of what happens in other countries. But you have just given us a vivid picture that issues of children, even around the COVID pandemic, are still there, you know, and they're existing, and we would need to do something about it. So thank you once again. And you spoke about it raise a village to raise a child. And also that takes me back to Hillary Clinton's book called It Takes a Village to Raise a Child, where she speaks about us creating a village where children can actually be be treated with care as we are doing at Nyaka. So I run the same program in Soweto that looks after orphaned and other vulnerable children. We have over 1,852 children that we're looking after in 453 households. And most of our households are either youth-led or actually headed by grannies. Now, the challenge that we are experiencing right now, Jackson, is that with the COVID pandemic, we are seeing children losing mpilo. We are seeing children losing their grandparents who actually were their sole carers, you know, and all of a sudden children lose the grandmothers and the grandfathers due to COVID. And we find children having almost like raising themselves up again. And I just wanted to find out if maybe you are experiencing the same challenges as we are having here, where the older generation is actually passing on. And you still have the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds who actually all of a sudden have to raise up to the challenge of raising themselves up again. If that is actually happening in Uganda again. But my second question would be around gender-based violence, you know, and we are seeing that in our country, like like the president of our country actually calls it a second pandemic. And I just wanted to find out from you, you know, like I read what you are doing right now, but when gender-based violence happens in the family, you know, where children are actually made to keep quiet because they want to preserve family, but on the other hand, experiencing this violence that happens to them, especially amongst young girls. But also want to congratulate you on keeping even the pregnant girl child at school, which is very, very important, especially when the pregnancy actually came through rape. But once again, Babu Jackson, enkosi kakhulu for the amazing work that you do.
Thank you. Should I take multiple questions and answer them at once or answer one at a time? Stefan.
Maybe answer one at a time.
Answer one at a time. So from the beginning, Carol, thank you so much. And Stephanie just shared a website for your work. We'll follow up and read more about it. But thank you for the work you do in South Africa. You are absolutely right. During this COVID, we have faced a bigger challenge, which we didn't anticipate, which is so many grandmothers passing away. And part of it has to do with the stress. There's no COVID in the Nyaka village where our programs are located. There is in Kampala. So these deaths are happening because of age, just like my mother who was 93 and passed away. Our program knew that placing children within grandmothers, that was something that will happen eventually. And when you see the 15,000 numbers, we always report to our communities, grandmothers pass away constantly. When that happens, because sometimes we have already built a home for that grandmother, the children have a place to stay. We just bring in another woman who is going to be the mother, an aunt, or somebody else who will take care of those children to grow. Many children actually choose not to bring in another one. If they're a little bit older, they say we'll take care of ourselves. Then we have a social worker to check on them constantly. We also, if you read my book, A School for My Village, you also find out even earlier on, we had children who raised themselves, who were scared if we say that we are by ourselves, uncles will grab our land. So and so might come and hurt us. And as a school, we knew that some of these children were living by themselves and assisted them. One of them is Bruno, who you meet in A School for My Village. Now Bruno is a full-grown young man working and sustaining himself, and actually he's getting married soon. So that has happened, and we still have those who are raising themselves. In terms of gender-based violence, which you highlighted, that's a huge challenge that we are continuing to face, mainly because of the culture that surrounds it. Like you said, Carol, even also in Uganda, a child any child, boy or girl, you are to respect elders. A girl child is even worse because you are, in some cultures, you even have to kneel down when somebody older than you is there. That kneeling down, the man says, go in that house, follows her and rapes her. She will never say anything. When she says to the mother says, don't worry, you'll be okay. So now she can't talk to the mother, she can't talk to relatives. If she's an orphan, she can't take her uncle, or the uncle himself is the one raping her. We have had dads raping their own children. I don't think they should even be called dads. You can rape your own child or rape anybody for that matter. So some of it is psychological, mental health that is not addressed in our area. Drunkenness, people get so drunk, they walk in a home and end up in their daughter's room. And these issues are bigger than us. But in Nyaka, we decided there's no bigger problem we cannot tackle. We can't solve it completely, but we'll make steps towards it. And since 2015, gender-based violence has been something we do and continue to do. Now we are looking in safeguarding, prevention ways, and please share experiences. We learn from each other, and we'll do it better when we know what else is being done. But reach me, Carol, on the side. You have my email now and contact. We'll continue to share ideas and any of you on how we can continue to make this place a better place for our children to grow in. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. And every time I look in their eyes, I want them to be involved in doing something in this world. My something is children and grandmothers. Their something can be rescuing dogs and cats and horses. It has to be something. And my testament on doing all this work is it is possible. If I can do it, coming from using 1/5 of a pencil to Columbia University winter, to Michigan winter, it can be done. And that is the hope I want everybody who has ever listened to me or has read my books, children books, adult books. This is another one, Victory for My Village. That is one Stephen is holding up. A School for My Village was published as Price of Stones. And that's another channel that gets more people to learn about the work we do and support it, and also raise awareness of what is possible out there, especially when we are all on the brink of tears of what's happening in our world. Hope is something we can continue holding on.
All right. Thank you so much, Jackson. And also, maybe just a heartfelt gratitude to Stephanie as well for the amazing work that she does, that she has done with us as all HREP alumni, you know, that as we come back home, there are so many other things that we see that we would not have been aware of. And thank you once again, Stephanie, for making us aware of other work that is done in other countries, so that also we may be able to change on how we do things, but also to be aware of what is happening in other countries as well. Thanks again, Stephanie.
You're welcome, and thank you to the alumni who come. Without you, we wouldn't have this continued learning. And you can see, I brought home this book. I opened it up. Jackson, this is from 2010. You signed the book. So this is a long time we have been seeing you in HREP. Yes. Yeah. There was one question, Jackson, in the chat. It was about, I will just read it. How is the sponsorship of your project? Do you receive support from the parents of the kids, or from the Education Authority in Uganda, or from external donors? And also, Ekanim, go ahead, please ask your question now.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jackson. It was really quite insightful to know what you're doing. Especially what was drawn to me was the part of young people living with HIV, children living with HIV. And I want to ask, because I understand the peculiarities with Uganda's human rights abuses, especially around, especially for young people living with HIV who are as well key populations. So I understand currently I want to ask, within the confinement of your work, do you work with young key populations? That means young people, young people who who use drugs and adolescent female sex workers. And if you do, I want to ask, how have you been able to maneuver, or have you been able to address the challenge of and ensuring that the young people, the young KPs, and young people living with HIV are protected from all these against their rights as a human being? So I want to know that, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Econom, right? That's how you say your name? Yes, so your connection was in and out, but I think I caught the essence of your question, which is in regard to human rights for young people. Do we work with young people who are using drugs or sex workers, and how do we maneuver the law in Uganda? Many of you, if you don't know, Uganda, some years ago during the presidential elections in 2016, Uganda actually went to parliament and passed a bill that basically stated if you are gay or lesbian or any other rather than man and woman, you could be killed in the country. I'm sure that's the law you are referring to. So Nyaka is located in the rural area of Uganda. During that time, actually, we actually had and still have teachers who are gay and lesbian. They don't come out as openly as we do in this country. Ekenem, I think, I don't know which country you are from, but many countries on the continent of Africa actually has that law on their paper. And Nyaka was one of the organizations at that time that reached out to the government saying people's rights need to be protected. But one thing for sure that we all know, many of our African countries are homophobic. And that homophobia is ingrained even in the religious practices that many of our parents have practiced and many of the pastors and church organizations have continued to promote. Both ways, one promoting the extreme and another one promoting extreme, one pushing in money to pass these laws, another one pushing this money to fight it. Nyaka as a community organization has stayed impartial in those conversations, but stating what we know as human beings and what is right to us and to the communities we serve. So our children are protected. We don't work directly with sex workers. These are mainly in the cities. Nyaka is 10 hours from the city, but any human right in this community that is violated and we have a way to address it, we address all these human rights. And this, your question ties also into what Francis was asking, how we are supported as an organization. And he listed different, it is in the chat, different ways. We are supported by all the above. From an individual here in the United States who will write a check and send it to Nyaka, to a teacher in Nyaka who gets their salary and say, I live in a community where your grandmother does not have a house and I want them to have a house. We make people understand that giving is not limited to anybody, to any age, or to any region. So we have fundraisers in Uganda, we have Attorney General's giving, we work with the government of Uganda and push them to address issues of making a change in their own communities. We get our children to give to each other, and once a month, if you're a child, or you are a guardian of a child that is attending our schools, you come and give your time. Most of them don't have the cash to give, but they give time. They give pencils, they give bananas. If they have a bigger harvest, they give, they don't look what we have external funding coming in, so we will not be able to give. Staff members do give in their way, their expertise. When somebody volunteers their time to come and cut grass at the school, we make sure they understand they are a donor who gave, what do you call it? Non-tangible. It is not a cash donation, but is in kind. They are giving in kind donation. And because of that recognition, everyone feels a part When we were building that high school, you just saw it in my picture. It's a $3 million building, but children in our nursery schools were asked one day to go and pass bricks to the workers. So now when you ask them who built the school, they all say, we built the school. Kids in Korea in the nursery school raise the money and call it brick by brick. Children in Nyaka passed the bricks. Women came and carried water as we were mixing mortar. Men in the village either volunteered or came to work and got paid. So we tried to make it a participatory activity so that everyone's voice can be heard. And that goes into our choices for uniforms. Children choose their own uniforms. Grand marshals choose what they wear. We try to make it a choice based while also respecting the culture of elderly, but also telling them if the culture hurts you, you come out of that house crying because a man told you to go there, then we need to know so we can address it. It's a tough job we do, but we have done it for 20 years and we continue to improve it as we go along. And I have all the time. If you are not in a rush, I have extra time to spare here. But I do want to respect people's time, which promised you an hour. It is top of the hour, but you can continue asking questions. I'm not running away.
Jackson, congratulations on 20 years. That is really something. Yes, yes.
Thank
and
you.
also 25 years, this group, you always remind me you're coming up on the quarter of a century. So welcome to your 25th anniversary. Aurora had a question for you. I don't want to neglect her question, please.
I'm so proud of you, Jackson. 25 years and we're still in human rights work. Yeah, it looks like you are a leader in a big community. And it's like you're doing what government should be doing for your village.
That's true.
I'm wondering because I saw that very huge buildings, not just one building, but huge buildings. So how do you manage? How many staff do you have? And how is the relationship of Nyaka with the government? Do they give you problems or are they supporting you?
Thank you, Aurora. Aurora always reminded me when we got to our program, she would gather these GQ magazines and cut my picture and Amy Waters' picture because we are always in a suit, the British system of dressing, and put them on and say, you are the GQ. At the time, I didn't know what GQ meant. Afterwards, I found out that magazine. I'm still working hard to get Nyaka in that magazine. Maybe one day, one day you can get a Nyaka student dressed in a suit in that GQ magazine. But your question is, how many staff members do we have now? We started with, 20 years ago, we employed my former teacher and another young man as 2 employees of Nyaka. As of this speech, we have 125 staff members in Uganda. They are headed by a country office in Kampala. The capital city of Uganda is Kampala. I apologize, I didn't put a map of where we are located. The capital city is Kampala. We have a country director, she's a woman, leading our program that tells you about women leadership. You want to put a program like this that will continue to change lives. We specifically recruited a woman. I think, Joanne, you've met Jennifer in New York. She comes to the United States to do, when we are doing marathons, and for her, number one, to get to know the people who support the organization, but also expose herself to more dynamics. 125, by the end of this year, we would have increased them to 130 because we've increased the number of grandmothers we work with. 8 of those staff members are former students of Nyaka. We have social workers, we have drivers, we have IT, and we have 2 teachers who have finished their education and came back to work with the organization. The statement you made, we are doing what the government should be doing. the government of Uganda recognizes that fact also. And it's not that they recognize it, we also push it in their eyes all the time. In that book, Stefan raised up, mine has so many, there is where I write about inspectors of schools asking for a bribe before they gave us a certificate to operate. When that happened in this book, and I was there, I told the teachers, don't give them any bribe, I'll go talk to their boss. And the boss is like a regional governor. I went to her office and told her that your inspectors are not giving us a certificate because they want a bribe. And her response, quoting from the book, she said, maybe I would deduct their salaries and give them that bribe myself. She said they had asked for fuel, that they needed fuel for their motorcycles. And since that time, Nyaka has not paid a single bribe. When we have issues, I can walk to the Prime Minister's office in Kampala and he will give me audience. We have worked with the government in a collaborative way, including calling them out. Instead of issuing a press release in the newspaper in Uganda, for us, we will go to their office and talk to them about what is happening. And with our grandmothers program, we have a collaboration with the government, with the elderly. With our education system, we work with the Ministry of Education. The president's wife is the Minister for Education and Sports. When we are bringing children here to the United States, either for medical purposes or for schooling, we work with the embassy. In fact, the former ambassador of the United States in Uganda now is a board member on the Nyaka board here in the United States. It is a huge collaboration between the two governments. And when they have training opportunities, they involve us in training opportunities. We refuse to get money from the government, not that they have even offered it, because then they would influence our policies. If the government was giving Nyaka money to build that secondary school you saw, we would not have pregnant girls in that school because it's against the government policy. And when that conversation was happening, the Prime Minister said to me, you know you are pushing the envelope. And I said, as long as you don't fund us, you can't tell us what to do. And he respected it. In that way, we stay independent, but also doing the work we need to do without the influence of government money.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You're really doing great work, Jackson, and it's thousands of people who are being affected positively by that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's tens of thousands of people, Jackson, now, I believe.
Yes, so when you look on average, the grandmothers, grannies, Carol also in South Africa, they call them grannies. We call them grandmothers and grannies program. 15,000 of them, an average grandmother lives with 6 children. So that's a population of 85,000 children who are able to get soap at home, have paraffin, that's what you put in your candle to make light in those houses. We are now working with different solar companies to provide small solar lights so the children can have where to read their books. During the pandemic, Nyaka has been providing reading materials, paper reading materials stapled, and our teachers take them and drop them in different centers. Then kids come pick them, study. 2 weeks later, they come and pick them up. We are the only school in the region that has kept our students learning using that, but then kids come back and say, we don't have light in the house. So we worked with the Rotary Club in Indiana and got those, like one piece of a round solar light. The women go with it in their garden during the day, put it on the sun. When they come home, they press the button and da-da, they have light for at least 2 hours. So we've been collecting those and sending them to Uganda, but we have a huge number to cover, but the few that are able to get them are getting them. Then the women are also investing more as when they make this money, which is where the woman investment, it's funny to say to all women, and now it's most of women here as participants. When we invest in a woman, their returns go back into the home to improve the home. When that money has ended up in the man's hands, it has ended up somewhere else, either at the bar or at the mistress or at the second wife or at somewhere else. Little percent ends at home. The huge percent for women ends improving the house. We are going to hire a monitoring and evaluation person, so you don't have to hear Jackson saying it, so we can prove it to the world in numbers. And our repayment loans also, when we give them that fund, 98% pay that money back. So another woman can have more money to borrow and improve their livelihood.
Oh, Jackson, thank you so much for that. I think we've already gone a little over, and I'm cognizant of everyone's time. Is there anyone with a burning comment or question for Jackson? Burning. Jackson, really, on behalf of HRAP, everyone here today, thank you so much for taking this time, for sharing with us. I know that everyone here, some of us are at different levels in your Nyaka journey, but I believe everyone today benefited from your talk. So thank you so much for doing this today for us. And thank you for what you do at Nyaka. It is amazing.
Thank you. Now you see I'm
Thank
trying
you.
reactions and I can't get it right, but thank you very much. Thank you for making time, and please stay in touch.
We will, Jackson. And thank you to everyone for coming today.
Thank you.
Having
Thank
it-
you, Stephanie,
Of
and
course.
hi, Joanne, even virtually. Yeah,
Good to see you.
I was with Jackson before. Thank you.
All right.
Good to see
Thank-
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, Jackson.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And
Bye,
all the
everybody.
best to Carol's work, to Carol on her
Bye.
work.
Thank you, Ekanim, Chitra.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Stephanie, I sent you something I sent an email to you.
I will answer you
Did you-
after this talk. I will get it.
Okay.
I saw it already. Thank you, Ekanim.
All right.
All right.